I think it's very appropriate to talk about the ecosystem here in the Triangle, and then certainly with this group here. And we have a wonderful panel, and they're very representative of industry, the universities, and electric utilities. And so when I think about the Triangle area, it's very easy to get excited about clean technology and the energy space. And I'm going to give you just a little bit of background. I'm going to repeat a couple of things heard this morning because I think it's worth repeating that. And that being that there should be no surprise of the concentration of companies involved in this space here in the Triangle. When you look at the depth of the technology companies involved in smart grid and transportation and water, we have 3 major universities who are very much engaged with us in this industry. We have an unbelievable workforce. We have a critical mass of workforce that's trained and many years in this business here. And we have unbelievable capital investments that have been made. And with all of that, I'm going to touch on one thing before we get into our panelists, and that being that we formed a Cleantech cluster called the Research Triangle Cleantech Cluster about 2 years ago, but it didn't start 2 years ago. If you go back, Westinghouse Electric Corporation moved their meter division to Raleigh in 1954, and many other companies followed after that. Those companies are involved in metering and transmission distribution and data analytics and infrastructure. And then we're also very fortunate that we have a National Science Foundation-funded graduate-level research center called the FREEDM Center at NC State. And you put all these together, we have an unbelievable mix of companies here. We started RTCC about 2 years ago, and part of it was because we started recognizing this from an economic development standpoint. The critical companies involved here are known worldwide. We started out thinking about smart grid, but we realized it's much harder than smart grid. The RTCC is one of 14 members of the International Cleantech Network based out of Copenhagen. I think there's only one other in the U.S., and that is in Boulder. And so we're very fortunate to have that recognition worldwide. And I'm going to repeat something that John Atkins did this morning because it's well worth remembering. Because you don't think about the clusters here. We always think about biosciences and pharmaceuticals and so forth. But again, we've got in the Triangle region, which is about a 13-county region around the Raleigh area, we have 96 smart grid companies, 47 advanced transportation companies, and 60 water technology firms or water companies. And what that means is that from 2009 to 14, and again, I'm repeating, they created almost 3,000 direct jobs, almost $850 million in new investment. And if you look at North Carolina, it's not just the Triangle region, but in North Carolina, there was about $2.6 billion in private investment made in clean technology over the last 5 years. And this is coming out of Pew. They estimate another $8.1 billion over the next 10 years. There's 83,000 people that work in either energy or clean tech in the state of North Carolina. So it is a very significant part of our economy any way you want to look at it. What I'm going to just go through and very quickly introduce our panel members, and then we'll jump right into some questions. But we've got a great mixture here. We have Lee Congdon, who's the CEO of Red Hat. We have Luke Fishback, CEO of PlotWatt. Don Bowman, the engineering manager of Wake EMC. Paul Quinlan, a clean tech specialist with ScottMadden, a consulting company. Dr. Iqbal Husain, who's the director of the FREEDM Center at NC State. And again, even though I'm biased to state, we're very fortunate to have Newell, Dr. Richard Newell, who's the director of Duke Energy's Energy Initiative. And thanks to all of you for agreeing to join our panel today. And even though we love to beat up on our good friends at Duke and Carolina when we can, which is not often, we're so fortunate to have those universities here. And we have been engaged both at UNC and at Duke with our Clean Tech Cluster and the stuff that we have going on. And it really adds so much to what we're doing here. So I'm going to jump right into it, and it's interesting because Red Hat is not a meter company, not a T&D company, but they certainly did a great job in replacing the logo of Progress Energy downtown Raleigh. And so I think it's appropriate right now to ask Lee, and I'll give him the easy question, and it's this: in a world of always connected cloud computing, what energy developments do you think will have the greatest impact?
Great. Well, I'm happy to answer that question. I will say, we're about 3 blocks north, and now Red Hat Tower, I think they used to call it Progress 2 or something like that, but we are delighted to be downtown. When I think about the impacts in information technology and energy, I would cite 3. First of all, data centers consume vast amounts of energy, and that's changing over time, but it's still quite an expense. And it's something that we think about a lot in terms of optimizing systems and solutions to ensure that they're more efficient in energy usage. The second piece I would cite is that mobility and mobile devices and many other things are driving battery technology and portable storage of energy in many new directions, and we're continuously looking for breakthroughs to make those devices more reliable, more long-lived, and so on. But for us at Red Hat, I think as we look to an interconnected and always connected world, it's actually a tremendous business opportunity. The amounts of data that are going to be spinning off of those grids and connected devices, the need to manage them in real time, as well as look historically for how they behaved over time to ensure that they're behaving properly, to take action when they require corrective action, to update them, and so on, are going to create a set of opportunities. And all the applications that we can't even envision yet are going to create a set of opportunities. So we're very excited because we see this as a great business opportunity.
And it's interesting with Red Hat, and again, I mentioned that you're not a meter 10D company, and you're not thought of as that way either. You're obviously huge when you think about infrastructure and stuff, and so the question is, why are you here? Give you an easy one.
Why am I here? Well, I have a personal fascination, and one of my jobs as a senior leader in the company is to understand where our business opportunities are. So for me, this is part education, but the opportunity to engage with you, hopefully our customers, thank you, or our potential customers, as well as to get an understanding of where this very important business area is going, absolutely vital. I would also say that we're very proud of being headquartered here in Raleigh. We're a global company. More than half of our associates are outside the United States, but our largest location is Red Hat Tower. So we're very much a part of the community here and proud to be part of the community in the Triangle.
Right, and want to have you more engaged with us as we go forward, obviously. Let's hear from the academic side. And you've also heard everybody talk about earlier something called a triple helix model. And triple helix was explained to me was made up of academia, business, and government. And I tried to figure out how the hell you work that in a conversation over cocktails. So as you go through these things today, think about the things that you hear and think about when you're having cocktails, not with this crowd, but with your buddies at home in the evening. How do you work this in the conversation? So we're very fortunate. Iqbal Husain is the executive director of our FREEDM Center. And the FREEDM Center, if you haven't been through it, is on Centennial campus, and it's a major asset for us for this region here. And Iqbal, from your view, what are some of the key partnerships among universities, government, and industry in this region going on along the triple helix thing that I just mentioned?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have actually a lot of collaborative work going on involving government, industry, and academia. I would name a few. I mean, I'm coming from NC State, of course. I'm biased towards that. But the freedoms at the NC State, we have the Freedom System Center, which is a National Science Foundation-sponsored research institution, potentially for like a 10-year of investment by the federal government. And then it has to be self-sustaining, and we are on our path to that. And it has to have the industry involvement, significant part of it. And also the education and the workforce training, that also is a key component of the Freedom Center. So that's a very good example of how industry, academia, and the government are coming together to develop the workforce of the next generation, and not only that, developing the technologies also. And out of that Freedom Center, other things also evolved. For example, I'll give you another example, the Power America, which is now called. It started as with the name of National Manufacturing Wide Bandgap Power Electronics Manufacturing Innovation Institute. That is another example of how the academia, government, and the industry have come together to develop the technologies in the wide bandgap power semiconductor devices, starting from the very bottom, like foundry level, all the way up to the end user, addressing all of the needs. The technology spaces are different, but that's another example that we have over here. And the Centennial campus itself is where like the industry and academia are working together. You know, there are many industries over there coming along, working together to help the ecosystem.
Right, and today we heard a lot about the energy space and microgrids and so forth. And you think about the Freedom Center, what would you say is the most exciting technological thing that you're working on at the Freedom Center today that could change the industry?
Yeah, I was listening to the keynote speaker. hear about microgrids, and that's very much in line with what we are doing at the Freedom System Center. So the focus for the Freedom System Center, as this is a national engineering research center, but we have to address a grand challenge problem. And our grand challenge problem is to modernize the grid. And we develop technologies, algorithms, components that help us achieve that goal. And in terms of that, a couple of key hardware technologies, for example, developing the solid-state transformer and the protection devices that will enable the DC as well as AC as well as DC penetration of power systems, and integration of the renewables into that. So we try to develop algorithms, technologies that will help us facilitate plug-and-play interconnection of all of these devices and components together to deliver a resilient and a reliable power system at the distribution level.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And turning to our utility representative, Don Bowman. Don, I want to ask you, what is the real benefit of working for a utility in the Triangle? We're fortunate because in the Triangle we have Duke Energy, we have Electric Cities, we have NCEMC, and you're with Wake EMC. Sure. And I've always said you can't do one without the other, and I view it, we're very fortunate to have the mix of utilities in the Triangle that we have that allows us to have these companies that are based here to work together.
Right. Well, a little bit about my background is that before I came to North Carolina, I was up in Washington, D.C. area working for a national cooperative called NRTC, the National Rural Telecommunications Cooperative. My role in that organization was to research technologies that were a good fit for rural cooperatives, because rural cooperatives across the country are not easy to get to by every vendor, because there are 900 of them spread out in rural areas. So I had the pleasure of 5 or 6 years before coming down here researching. I found myself that at least every other week I was on a direct flight on United down to the Raleigh area because I was researching companies that were being startups here in this area, and they were doing great things, and they had a good fit. So I was not from the D.C. area. My wife was, and there was definitely a desire for me to move my family into a better place to live. And so when the opportunity came to come down to North Carolina, it was really great, and I jumped at the chance. Now at Wake Electric, just about 30 miles north of here in Youngsville, we have access to a lot of local experts. I mean, we have been able to do pilots with the likes of Siemens and Census and ABB and Concert Technologies, all being a part of it, and knowing that we had the support of local entities here to make it work. So we found that it was easy for us to research the technologies and have them come visit us and see what we're doing. By the way, just a little bit about Wake Electric. We're also about 40,000 consumers, largely residential on that. We found that telecom, big part of the smart grid. Telecom is rampant in this area. We have access to fiber in some areas. We have access to DSL and cable. And some of even our most remote substations throughout our territory, we've already have built out of telecom in those areas, which quickly give you a head start on trying these technologies. Our consumers are typically more educated. We find that having an educated consumer gives us good feedback, gives us a chance to bounce ideas off of them on a regular basis. And we also have the opportunity to feel comfortable working with organizations that provide cloud computing and hosted services. That's a big step for utilities. We've always liked having our data nearby in our own home-built data centers that we know where everything sits. So we've been able to dip our toe in the water of hosted solutions by at least knowing them they're in the Raleigh area somewhere, and we can drive down and see our servers. But it's allowed us to have people like Census host our AMI data, which in the past was unheard of, to put your metering data somewhere else. But we found that having partners local to us have been a real plus for us. It's made us trying technologies really easy.
And you mentioned pilots, and I'll go back to my old days at Westinghouse. Wake EMC was always very good to let us go out and test things, whether it was Powerline Carrier or whatever it happened to be. Some of it way before your time, obviously. But once you get through the pilots there, what's the primary objectives of a utility like yours to deploy these type technologies?
Well, we really have to weigh, we're really trying after operational efficiencies. Being a rural cooperative, we spend a lot of time on the road. We have very wide territories with a minimal amount, with a small amount of resources. So we spend a lot of time going from point to point. So if we can get more data, use that data, change the way we optimize our system, we can reduce the number of outages, thus affecting our customers, give us more data to work with. We obviously want to manage our peak loads. We are on a wholesale rate with Duke Energy, so we want to be able to manage our peak capacity, and so we want technologies that do that. So I would focus, all of our technology decisions are either based on creating energy efficiencies, operational efficiencies, customer satisfaction, and the new term is cybersecurity. Making sure we're focused on investing the right amount. We are we're right now weighing what our budget should be for cybersecurity, knowing that a portion of it needs to be there for cybersecurity. How much is too much before you get diminishing returns, and how much is too little and you put yourself at risk? So that's some of the things that we're focusing our efforts on right now.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned security. The Triangle area has been very fortunate because we've attracted a lot of investments from the federal government, from the National Science Foundation, that ranges from the FREEDM Center to other areas, and some of them is in the nuclear proliferation area. And I'll screw up. I always tell everybody, I never let facts get in the way of a good story, so I'll tell you that right now. But I'd like to come back and address the security a little bit later, because that's going to be an area that we have the expertise here to address a lot. And there's a lot of these standards are evolving. And security, some comments earlier this morning talked about the privacy of data. I can walk up to Lee's house and watch the meter turn, and I know whether he's home or not, or whether he's getting beer out of the refrigerator. And that doesn't do a whole lot for you. But if I had the ability to disrupt his house or to disrupt the grid, then security has an entirely different meaning. And so I'd like to talk a bit about what our industry can do in that area a little bit later. But before we do that, I'm the last guy to have to admit it, but Duke University is setting the standard for football in the state of North Carolina right now. Them in East Carolina, and being a state guy, that's kind of hard to sit here and say. But Richard, you guys have done a great job, and I'm not sure they play basketball at Duke anymore, but you guys are doing a hell of a job with football right now. Duke, again, a university, is I don't think of them as they have an engineering school, believe it or not, and very well-respected engineering school, and half the people I know going to Duke wind up being medical doctors, which is probably good out of the School of Engineering. But we were over there last year with their Cleantech Cluster for a meeting, and it was during your Energy Fair Energy Week, and I had the opportunity to speak to students, which they let a state guy come in and speak, which is kind of unusual in itself. But I'm curious about what you think about, how does Duke approach this whole energy a little bit different than the rest of us does? And obviously, probably from the business side as much as anything.
Yeah. So if you think about the challenges or problems that we're trying to solve in energy, and when I say we, I mean all of us around this room, the country, globally, we face three major energy challenges. One is significantly growing energy demand. Energy is an essential part of human and economic development, and we're on a track globally for energy to grow 30 to 50% over the next generation. So, challenge number one, how do we meet these growing energy demands? And challenge number two is reducing the environmental impact of the energy system. Energy production and use both have significant local and global environmental impacts. So how do we meet the demands, not just the current ones, the growing ones, at the same time that we hopefully reduce the environmental impact? And then the third major challenge is, you could think of as the security challenge or the reliability challenge. How do we provide energy, meet these needs with a secure and reliable system? So if you think about the solutions to these kinds of problems, they're not just science and technological solutions. They're not just solutions in terms of market and finance. They're not just solutions from a policy point of view. It's really, in the energy system, it's an intersection of technology, markets, and policy if you really want to make progress that will have impact in the real world. So the way that we've designed the Duke University Energy Initiative really from the start was that it integrates the work of 6 different schools across the university. There's, of course, the engineering school, arts and sciences, there's the business school, the law school, the Nicholas School of Environment, and the business school. I think maybe I listed all 6. Anyway, so, and we're deliberately orchestrating integration of our educational curricula as well as our research programs to look for intersections across disciplines and then connect what we're doing in the university to the business and policy community to have that have a real impact.
And when you think about that, what are the research areas that you are most excited about yourself and also you feel are the game changers coming out of Duke?
On the research front, and I think we'll hear a little bit about, we heard it from the Red Hat point of view. I think we'll also hear it from Luke. One of the things that, we have work going on in the area of energy materials and solar. We have work going on certainly on the energy economics and finance side. Something that we've just launched, which I'm very excited personally about because I'm a little bit of an energy data geek, is a new energy data analytics lab that we just started. And really what the energy data analytics lab is doing is connecting the energy initiative at the university with another initiative which is called the information initiative, which is connecting across computer science, statistical science, electrical and computer engineering, mathematics, with economics and business to connect all of the information and data analytic sciences. And so what we've done is we brought that together with energy and are looking at the intersection now. We face an avalanche of information in all parts of our lives. That's true in most of what we experience now. It's also true in energy. So electrical utilities are, I think, have been enabled by smart meters with huge amounts of information. I think electrical utilities, I think energy companies, I'll take General Electric, for example, all of General Electric equipment that it sells around the world, jet turbines, combined cycle gas turbines for power generation. All the equipment they sell is also all collecting information. So we have this Internet of Things, and we're all struggling with how do we take this voluminous amount of information and actually turn it into something useful for decision making. So our Energy Data Analytics Lab is focused on that. There's a number of different applications here. There's fault detection, there's market segmentation to find customers in different classes, for example, for energy efficiency programs. There's forecasting into the future. Using energy indicators perhaps as economic indicators. So that's an area that I'm particularly excited about.
We have, we're fortunate because in the Triangle area, we not only have the global mega companies that range from ABB, Siemens, Schneider, but we also have great startup companies. And Red Hat was a startup company at one time as well. They're no longer a little startup company anymore. But Luke, you have a company called PlotWatt, which is interesting, and I know a little bit about. And it's interesting because a lot of what we've done with our Cleantech cluster is to create an environment to attract venture capital to the companies like PlotWatt. And I guess a question I have for you is, what's a conversation I had one time, and you essentially said that Cleantech is almost like a dirty word in the venture capital world. What's your view on that?
Yeah. So I think that Cleantech has generally done a big disservice to itself in the way that we are kind of positioning a lot of the innovation that's happening in the world of energy. So specifically, when you look at companies through the venture capital lens, you're looking for things that have order of magnitude opportunities. Can we do it 10 times better? And by the way, if we can get viral penetration on the back of that, totally awesome. So there's a little segment of clean tech being a bit of a dirty word right now on Sand Hill Road out in Silicon Valley that is just the regular hype cycle of venture capital in investing. But I think actually the more critical issue is that too much of clean tech is focused on marketing the innovations that we're doing as incremental improvement that sells to a slow buyer. So I'm going to make electricity a little bit cheaper, a little bit cleaner, maybe massively cleaner. But at the end of the day, we're not solving what in our perspective as American energy consumers is the thing that keeps me up at night, outside of this room of nerds, right? So as somebody who pays an electric bill, do I really care that much about my electricity bill? So the opportunity, when you look at the clean tech success stories, what you see Trojan horses in a lot of cases. So you see somebody like a Nest thermostat, and I think most people aren't looking at the Nest and saying, "Oh, what a clean tech success story." They're saying, "Wow, that's a sexy thermostat, right? I want that on my wall for some reason." And so it's a better thermostat. It's a better way to interact with the consumer. Or look at something like the Tesla. It's a beautiful car. It's more of a status symbol. And yes, oh, by the way, it doesn't emit any carbon. So When I look at the success stories that we're putting up in our world of energy analytics, so what we do at PlotWatt is we do big data analytics. Our core IP is around something called non-intrusive load monitoring, our electricity disaggregation. I can look at the meter on the side of your house, and like Ed said, I can actually figure out everything that's happening inside your house at the appliance level, give you a daily itemized electric bill. So maybe that's neat for us nerds, but what's really cool is the analytics that I can build on top of that, which is, to Richard's point, can I tell you if something that you actually care about is happening? Can I tell you that your refrigerator is about to break? Can I save you money in a really interesting way? So we stepped back from the market and we said, okay, what if we're not really a clean tech business, or if that's not really the way that we're going to go and sell a whole bunch of PlotWatt? And we found that it turns out our technology works great with chain restaurants. And it doesn't work great because I save them a lot on their electricity bills, which I do. It works great because I make them more profitable. I save them money on their repair and maintenance line item as much as I do on their electricity bills. So I get to take energy analytics, and yes, I'm looking at kilowatt hours, and I'm removing all these kilowatt hours from the grid. But the way that I get to do that is not by saying, I'm going to make you a greener Dunkin' Donuts. I do it by saying, I'm going to make you a more profitable Dunkin' Donuts. And our dirty little secret is that we're actually a clean tech company that's serving all these fast food restaurants.
One thing I'd like to add on that, and that being the word clean tech itself. Every company that is involved with us with our clean tech cluster, we're all in support of sustainability, reducing the carbon footprint, but we're not all tree huggers. Every company is involved in trying to grow their businesses very profitably and do the right things. But clean tech can be interpreted many different ways, in which I think you hit on a couple of them there. And the question I'd ask you to follow up on that is, what makes this the best place to do what you do, and what makes it the worst place when you think about it?
Yeah. So on the worst front, I was talking to a big clean tech investor in China last night, and he was telling me, clean tech is not a dirty word in China, incidentally. And one of the reasons it's not a dirty word in China is because they are face to face with the consequences of dirty energy, much more so than we are, particularly here in the beautiful state of North Carolina. So one of the things that actually makes this a difficult place to do a flourishing kind of clean tech startup is we're in a beautiful state that has really cheap electricity. And so we're not surrounded by smog, and our electricity bills aren't that bad. So that makes it a challenge. But on the flip side, it's also one of the things that's really cool about the Triangle. Because if your technology works here, it works everywhere. Particularly if you're doing an energy efficiency play like we are. So I'm delivering a 1-year payback on an energy efficiency technology for Dunkin' Donuts in North Carolina. That might be 3 months if I'm serving a Burger King in Jamaica. So I was at a Burger King conference recently, and look at I go to a lot of fast food chain conferences. It's really weird. So a typical Burger King uses something like $3,000 or $4,000 of electricity per month. I had a Jamaican franchisee approach me, and he said, my typical electric bill's $20,000. $20,000, like, holy shit, right? So I'm not saying that we need to multiply the cost per kilowatt hour by 7 to make the Research Triangle a great place to do business, but that'd be fine. What I'm saying is there are all of these other places where the pain is so much more real and so much more salient, and it's kind of difficult for us to really put ourselves certainly in the international shoes. One other thing that is great about doing an energy startup or a technology startup here is that we have an awesomely unfair advantage when it comes to attracting and retaining the best talent in the world. My brother is the CEO of a startup that's based in San Francisco. The market there for engineers is preposterous. It is ridiculously frothy, and it is so hard to keep your people, to keep good people. Here in the Research Triangle, we can be one of the coolest places, one of the coolest startups to go and working on meaningful problems outside of all of the hype, and our turnover looks great, and we attract great people, and we move them here, and they can afford to buy a house, and that's really cool.
And I'll follow up on that just a second. I used to be chairman of a company called Itron, merged with them in the mid-'90s. Corporate headquarters, Spokane, Washington. I used to tell everybody, if I ever got anybody to move to Spokane, we never lost an employee because there's nowhere else for them to work. You just couldn't get them moved to Spokane. And, Raleigh, we were so fortunate because if you needed any area of expertise, we had it here, which is why we sit around and do what we do here today. Paul is in the consulting business, works for ScottMadden. And I ask you this, what are the public policies that made North Carolina what it is as a clean energy leader? Because it was interesting today when you looked at out of some of the Duke presentations, the concentration of things like solar and so forth. It's a combination of regulatory and also business climate there. So what's your view on that as to why it works in North Carolina better than South Carolina?
I think there's a couple policies that have already been mentioned today, and two of the marquee ones. One is the renewable tax credit that we have in the state of North Carolina. That was implemented back in 1977 is when that was first put on the books. And we're approaching a time where that is set to expire at the end of next year. So that is a 35% tax credit for people that are investing in renewables. And the other big marquee policy that's been mentioned was the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Portfolio Standard. And that requires utilities in the state to invest in renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. Some of the other things, though, that the state has done that are sometimes overlooked, a big one is North Carolina was the first state to have a multi-utility voluntary green pricing program, and that's called NC Green Power. North Carolina started that in 2003, and that program still exists today, and utility customers for most utilities in North Carolina can pay $4 and have a block of clean energy developed. So we've been doing that for over 10 years now. Another policy that we had for a couple of years, from 2008 to 2011, there was a North Carolina Green Business Fund. And that was a grant that was given to both projects and companies in the state of North Carolina that were working on clean energy and green energy projects. So we've had this long history of supporting and creating a policy environment to promote clean energy technologies. As the map that Rob Caldwell put up, a big part of that is there's a solar requirement in the portfolio standard in North Carolina. So that's one of the reasons why we've seen North Carolina become a true leader in solar across the country. And what I think the real significant impact is that many of these policies have been in place for a couple of years now. And we've had kind of two groups of companies that have been here for a considerable amount of time, but then also a new group of startups that have been growing over the last couple of years. And so we've really incubated a lot of the companies, a lot of the products, a lot of the technologies, and now the region is just tremendously positioned to be able to deliver that to other parts of the Southeast or the country or even the world. So it's really been an incubation period, and it's critical because we're moving quickly from a policy-driven environment more to a market-driven environment. We see technologies and prices coming down to a point where the policies are set to expire either in the state of North Carolina or even at the federal level. And a lot of these projects are going to be driven on economics going forward, and North Carolina will be able to move forward because, as Luke said, if you can do it here, you can probably do it just about anywhere.
It's interesting because, as a regulated industry, which we live in around the world, Duke Energy, and I'm going to use them as the example. If you think about Duke and most utilities, they probably have had negative demand growth over the last couple of years. And if you think about integrated resource plans and the method of least cost generation from your base load all the way on up, a lot of what happens in renewable is not necessarily fit the old models of what we used to think about for integrated resource planning. And I guess a question from you is that when you look at a Duke and others who have been able to make this work, what can we really learn from them about the adoption and expansion of clean energy? Because that's not the typical model for a regulated, vertically integrated utility.
I think in North Carolina, we've seen a lot of utilities trying a lot of different things, and one of the big takeaways, and we've heard this throughout the day, is the theme of collaboration and partnership. So whether it's Wake EMC working and putting technologies on the distribution grid, or Rob Caldwell mentioned, the Green Source Rider, which allows large industrial customers to source their energy for new additions from renewables. You have a lot of trial and error, a lot of pilots that go in place, learning how the technologies are done. It supports the local manufacturers that are here. They can put their technologies out on the grid. So you've got, across the entire spectrum of the electric sector, whether it's T&D, whether it's regulation, or whether it's new business models, you've got utilities in North Carolina trying different business models. So when we do hit a point where some of these technologies do become more market-driven, the lessons learned will already be in place, and they'll be able to incorporate that both into their daily operations of the grid, but also their business models going forward as well.
Great. Now go back to Richard for a second here. Out of curiosity, why does Duke focus on the energy sector? Because I always think of Duke as health and medicine and the School of Medicine and everything else, and I don't think of Duke as being, you know, one of the leading universities, but you have obviously put a major focus on energy. Why is that?
Because Duke is, there's a few key strategic focal areas for the entire university. One of them is interdisciplinarity, which I already spoke to. And a second, very important, though, is bringing knowledge to the service of society. And so Duke has made a hallmark. We have a Global Health Institute, very focused on that, really important global challenge. And energy and the intersection of energy and environment, also very important social and global challenge. And so that's why the university is focused on it, because it's a really important set of issues that we need to solve. And Duke University, like many universities and companies, need to participate in that. Also, if you look at the assets the university has, not just at the engineering school, but at the business school, at the Nicholas School of Environment, there's assets that have grown up over several years because as energy has re-arisen as a really important issue, and what we're doing now is connecting and further building those.
Great, thanks. Back to Lee. We've been talking about the Internet of Things. That term is probably as hard to explain as smart grid is, because 10 people give you 10 different answers what the Internet of Things is, just like what smart grid is. What's the implications on energy consumption, and how do we expect it to develop, and where does Red Hat fit into that equation?
Yeah, it's great. As I mentioned earlier, this really is a business opportunity for us. And every 20 years or so, and I know we're not at a computing conference, but every 20 years or so, we go through sort of a transformation in the way computing is delivered, mainframes to minis, minis to micros, and so on. And we are right now making a fundamental shift from on-premises, sort of buy-your-own server-based computing, which has substantial energy ramifications in terms of the efficiency of those individual data centers, to a massive and pervasive utility computing model, interestingly enough, that is driven by cloud providers such as Google, Amazon, and others that are renting access to compute over the internet. It's going to enable a significantly larger class of applications, not just driven by our mobile phones and other devices, our automobiles, our homes, and others, but it's going to imply a class of applications we can't even think about yet when we start to string together the data around machines being able to know our habits, to know our preferences, to ship food and goods in advance of our ordering them so they're ready when we want them, to deliver them through autonomous vehicles and so on. All of those drive a substantial amount of energy consumption as we build more and more data centers to tie all those devices together. As those devices get smarter and smarter, they're going to be consuming more energy and having more compute capability on board, whatever type of device they might have to be. But at the heart, as several of us have mentioned, they will generate a great deal of data. And we're in the business of providing solutions to process data, as well as cloud computing solutions. So as we think about the Internet of Things, I think there are going to be substantial energy ramifications, but specific to Red Hat, this is a tremendous business opportunity for us because we believe open source and our platforms are a great place to start developing those applications.
Great, thank you. Iqbal, what are the ingredients in North Carolina for continued leadership in clean energy? We know we've talked a little bit about our history to get here. What do you see as we go out over the next 5 or 10 years? What's key for us to continue to stand where we're at in the lead in this area?
I think this engagement, the partnership between the industry, academia, and the government, and particularly as we wean out of the government subsidies or the grants and awards, the industry and the academia has to work together to move us forward.
Okay. And Don, you'd mentioned your customers being very much engaged with, and what's the impact of these on your customers? I'm talking about the mass market. You always have the techies. Like I have 2 meters on my house. I had the old days CP&L put a meter on. I've been reading for 20 or 30 years, but I'm not the normal guy that has a meter on their house, I'll admit. But for the average customer who doesn't know a kilowatt hour from a BTU of natural gas, if you will, what's all this mean with the technologies on the consumer? And there's got to be an education process.
That is one of our biggest challenges right now, and I appreciate you had a panel on here earlier talking about how we're going to get a large-scale adoption of the consumer, because you're right, I have a handful of customers that say, gimme, collect more data, give it to me so I can make use of that. But I probably have twice, 3 times, 5 times that amount of our members that said, I'd rather you not collect that data, because as long as that data can be subpoenaed by any entity outside of Wake Electric, I'd just as soon you not collect it. So, I mean, for the number of people that show me their iPad app and go, this is great stuff, thank you for providing this, I have just as many saying, don't collect this data. So, you know, it's how do you got to watch getting too far in front of that customer, because you got to satisfy the whole. So where do we stand? I think that the biggest impact on our customers is going to come for the utility creating efficiencies in our own day-to-day. Let's keep the outages low. Let's you know, one of the things that we're going after right now is conservation voltage reduction. We're going after it hard and heavy at Wake Electric, because we just got finished deploying AMI at every household, and we had to take those phone calls. What is this you're putting on my house? What is it going to do? What are you watching? What do you know about me? And that sort of thing. The last thing I want to do is knock on every door and say, do you mind if I put a switch on your equipment so I can control it from our office? You know, we've lost that generation willing to put switches on that, I think, for now. So what I wanted to do is find all the inefficiencies in my current distribution network, optimize those assets, optimize the efficiencies we can, and so I can look my consumer in the eye 5, 10 years down the road and say, I've done everything I can do on my side to make our system as efficient as possible. Now we're going to work together on this. And assuming that in that amount of time, we've got full engagement of our consumers. But I think the main impact is that we're going to try on our side to lower our own demand by using applications like that. We're going to get data from downline devices so that we can isolate our outages to the smallest segment, so that we can reduce our SAIDI, and those sort of numbers, because I think ultimately they don't realize it, but that's a big impact on them.
Yeah. And you know, really running the utility is pretty straightforward and very easy. A good friend of mine named Gary Ratcliffe made the comment one day. I was listening to him speak, and he said, keep the water hot and the beer cold and don't mix it up. So just keep it straight on that and you're in business. Luke, why is now a good time to invest in clean tech companies? I mean, we've talked about, and the Triangle obviously is not San Francisco and it's not Boston, but we are seeing companies come in and invest in here. So if you want to invest in clean tech companies, why would you do it now?
Yeah, so I think that right now where we are with respect to our kind of understanding of what can be done with energy data specifically, I think we're starting to really open up much broader opportunities. So to the point of kind of being the creepy utility who knows too much about what's happening inside of somebody's house or is taking control of their appliances. I think that we are just now getting to the point where we are sophisticated enough around understanding what is and what is not a good use of this data, that we can leapfrog ahead and provide real value for the customer, right? So it's kind of creepy that Google can read your email, but they give you really good free email, so you're okay with it, right? If we're solving real problems that people actually care about, if we're keeping the beer cold, right, and if we're doing that better, then we're onto something. As opposed to looking at this kind of deluge of smart grid data and saying, well, let's just divine whatever the hell we can divine out of it, and then make that available for people. That's wrong-headed, and I think we'll do more of that than we should before before we get to massive grid scale adoption of cool, big data plays in the world of energy. So I guess I'm not exactly answering your question of why is clean tech. I have a bias. I'm a big data guy. I think that we're finally learning how to do the right things with big data. So I think now is a really interesting time to be doing cool things with smart grid data, with big data, because we're solving real problems that people actually have, as opposed to just kind of barfing out whatever we can.
And that is all part of the equation there.
Yeah, I could add on to that. That's really what the direction that we're headed. We are collecting massive amount of data. And we're trying to put the right analytics to make good business decisions for our own distribution network. Yep. And we're using that, and I think that's going to benefit the member without delving into their home just yet.
Right. Yep. And we've got just a few minutes left. I'd like to open it up to the audience, if we could, for a couple of questions. And again, an hour is not long enough for a panel like this. You know,
let's give them a round of applause, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
What a beautiful discussion on Research Triangle energy ecosystems. We do have time for a few questions.
One of the things about utilities in the South, have always been really concerned about economic development, drawing jobs, drawing new companies to use their power. Now, obviously, if we're going to catalyze using less power, but we're doing it by creating more jobs and more demand for services from the utility, what are these business opportunities and what can we do to sell them to beyond the Research Triangle? I'm from Asheville, and we can use a lot of these jobs up in the mountains, and we'd be a great place for it because we're also attracting a lot of other types of innovative, breweries and other startups. So how can we show other parts of North Carolina that these are the jobs of the future, and this is where investment should go?
Don, do you want to take that one on?
Yeah, one of the biggest job opportunities within utilities is obviously going to be around data and data analytics. We have not, our utility has 2 IT personnel and a 40,000 home cooperative. I'm finding that's why we're headed to cloud computing and hosted solutions because, and we're the fortunate one. We're right outside the RTP. We would have those resources. You look at other utilities around the country that might struggle to get the IT resources out there, that I think data analytics and IT is going to take the place of a lot of traditional roles in the utility. The distribution engineer used to slide rule maps and design a system. Now the data designs the system, and it's how you read the data, analyze the data, and work with that. So I'm seeing before our eyes at the utility the traditional roles in the utility changing every day with data.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. An hour certainly is too short for a group like this. Thank you so much.